Now let's learn from Ilana as she shares a simple practice to acknowledge and create space for growth. Please welcome her to the stage.
Hi, everybody. It's awesome to be here. It's awesome and an honor because I get to share something with you that I'm actually very obsessed with, and it's changed my life, and I'm hoping that it's a gift for you all. And I'm going to start us off. A few years back, I had just gotten a promotion. I became a director. And it sort of landed on my lap, even though I really wanted it. I didn't apply. It just, was a surprise. And so I didn't get to prepare, really. I just kind of jumped into it. And from that perspective, I felt like maybe I didn't know everything I should know. And so I spent a whole lot of time preparing. I did a bunch of research. I watched every video I could. I read articles on my domain. I audited our internal landscape to see what should be there, what shouldn't be there. I looked at all of our tools. I checked for redundancy. I got rid of some tools. And then I found a tool. There was one out there that I thought would give us a competitive edge. And as I had just gotten this position, there was this budget thing that happened. And they were like, there's this budget going around, and you can add whatever you need to, if anything's going to help you. And I was like, OK, well, let me deliberate quite greatly on whether I can add this item. But I did. I added a line item to the budget. And guess what? It got approved. So others thought this tool could be useful as well. And a few weeks later, I found myself in a meeting to give a tour on this tool with two very important people. I got into this meeting, and we sat down, and I was driving the meeting and going through different screens and explaining what the tool was providing for us, what value was there, what it was suggesting. And we got to this one particular screen with a bunch of distribution metrics. And the metric was supposed to be distributed in a bell-shaped curve. And right next to it was sort of what ours looked like, essentially. And it wasn't a bell-shaped curve. It kind of looked like it was falling off a cliff. And in that moment when I saw that, I paused for a moment, and I kind of thought, oh, shoot, is that my responsibility? And my whole body froze in that moment, thinking I had failed. And I felt in the bottom left quadrant of my abdomen this heat flare up. And this heat started growing through my abdomen and back behind my back, and it was like hot lava climbing up the back of my spine to the back of my head. And it wasn't hot lava, guys. These were hot tears about to stream down my face in a meeting with two very important people. I never wanted that to happen again. That was probably the most compromised I'd ever been in my entire life, and I set out on a mission. I had to make sure that that would never happen again. And thankfully for me, I had a therapist. I found myself in her office a few weeks later explaining to her what had happened. And I was in this frenzy, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's two very important people, and the graph, and I don't know what happened. And she said to me, and I calmed down. When I calmed down and she could get a little word in, she says, are you feeling it right now? And I said, yeah. She says, where in your body or around your body are you feeling it right now? And I said, this bottom left quadrant. It feels very hot right now. And she says, is it okay to feel this right now? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of curious about it. And she said to me, Ilana, would you be willing to send some of that curiosity, some acknowledgement, to that part of you? I was talking to a hot spark in my abdomen. But there was something super powerful in that moment. It was like this part was separated, and there was space between Ilana and this part of me. And it was like an object that I was able to talk to. And so I went inside, I kind of closed my eyes a little bit, and I sent it the acknowledgement. And she says, how does it respond? Now, not only was I talking to it, but it was now going to talk to me. But I went with it, and I paused for a moment, and I went inside again. And all of a sudden, there was this flash of me as a 7-year-old reading to a group of kids. And I was fumbling on my words, and everybody laughed at me. And this part said, I never want you to feel that kind of shame again. And in that moment, when I heard that message, something changed inside me. It's like I melted a little bit. Like I understood why it worked so hard in that moment to take over. And just by creating that space, that relationship, I found myself in a meeting again with a very important person. A couple weeks later, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, guess what I felt? That hot spark at the bottom left quadrant of my abdomen again. But this time, I was a little familiar with it, and I was able to pause my meeting and ask for a moment. I said, 1 moment, please. And I went inside, and I had practiced sending it some of that curiosity, some of that maybe compassionate energy. And it died down. I said, I got this. And it was like, okay. And it let me come back to my meeting without hijacking me. And then 2 months later, I had another meeting with a very important person. And this time, that part, it was like a shadow of a part. I felt it somewhere in the back of my mind. And I was able to give it a high five. And it just subsided. It's like, I got this. And in that moment, everything changed with this very important person. Because now it wasn't a director and a very important person. I had a moment to respond instead of react. And in that response, I was able to understand that I wasn't being clear. And that maybe I needed to reframe what I was saying and slow down a little bit. And I did, and the message came across. And we weren't just two separate people anymore. We were together, collaborators, connected, working on something on the same team. And that changed everything for me. And now I do this little practice. It's called unblending. When you're hijacked by your part, when you're not feeling yourself, you go back. You come back to that moment. You check in with yourself when you're calm, and you maybe create a little bit of space. You find out why that thing that wasn't feeling so right, that anxiety or that worry, why it was there, why did it show up for you? Why did it need to work so hard to change your current experience, to hijack you from being who you truly are? And then when that understanding is a connection, there's enough space, they don't need to work so hard, you're actually present now. I was present for the majority of my meetings now. I wasn't being hijacked by worry, by anxiety, because I had spent the time, I invested the time to get to know my parts. This little practice of unblending has absolutely changed my life. And it's changed my relationships because I'm able to show up fully myself. And so I invite everybody else to check it out, try this little art or practice or tool of unblending, and getting to know when you're not quite yourself, and checking back in to separate and objectify and have a relationship with these different parts of yourself. That's all I got for you guys.